to Pakhuis Zwijger. Welcome to this 12th session of AMS Science for the City. On behalf both of Pakhuis and of AMS Institute, we've been organizing these sessions already for, I think, 2 years now. Again and again in a different kind of theme. Because both Pakhuis Zwijger and the AMS Institute actually look at a really broad range of urban issues. Today we look at the issue of circularity and then specifically the circular kitchen. We're very happy you're here. Just to get a bit of a sense of who's in the room, who has already been to Pakhuis Zwijger before? If you can raise your hand. Who knows the AMS Institute? That's much less. Okay, so that's a good bridge, because then I will invite my partner in crime, Maud, to come explain a little bit just for you all to know what the AMS is. So Maud, yeah, you can grab that one. And well, yeah, tell us about where you work.
Well, my name is Maud. I work at the AMS Institute here in Amsterdam. We're located at the Marineterrein. We are a research and education institute founded by three universities, TU Delft, Wageningen University and MIT. Already 5 years ago. It was because of a tender that was written out by the city of Amsterdam to bring more knowledge, technological knowledge in the field of urban development and metropolitan challenges to the city of Amsterdam. So that's what we've been doing over the past 5 years. We've started a master's program 2 years ago. It's called MADE, Metropolitan Analysis, Design and Engineering. It's a joint degree between Wageningen University and Delft University of Technology. And also we work on research and programs in different fields. I've written them down because always I forget one of them. So we work on the climate resilience of the city, making the city, working on mobility of within the city, the food system, energy system, data, and also on circularity. And this is also the theme of today. Yes, thanks. So within the circular team, we look at all the streams that go in and out of the city, focusing specifically on energy, food, and water, which is also building materials, which are all flows we will discuss also today within the program. So I hope you enjoy it, and if you have questions afterwards, let me know.
Yeah, so basically the idea of bringing AMS into the rooms of Pakhuis Zwijger is to open up this pool of wisdom and this pool of research to see, okay, what actually happens if you share these research results with people who are not part of the academic world or maybe are also part of the academic world but not only. To see, well, how does it connect, how does it correspond with different perspectives on these kind of issues, and also for the researchers themselves to learn something from all of you. So it's really the idea that it's a crossover. So throughout the entire evening, if you have questions, remarks, insights, raise your hand. We're not organizing a very formal evening in which you cannot open your mouth, but you can really be part of the conversation. So I would really like to invite you to do so. Just a small note, we are recording this. So if you want to say something, just raise your hand so I can come to you with the mic, because otherwise the people who are looking at the live stream cannot hear you. And then I have to repeat it, and then it becomes a very slow and chaotic process. So just raise your hand if you want to contribute. What we're going to do. So there are two researchers who actually formed the starting point for this evening. Anne van Stijn and Bas Jansen. They will present their research on the circular kitchen. And we thought it would be fun to have a kitchen setting. And then to sort of dive into this world of the kitchen to look at, okay, Anne and Bas are going to talk about how you really can build the kitchen itself in a more circular way, but there are many other interventions that you can do in your own kitchen. How do you go about the food that you use, the energy, the water that you use, the waste that you produce? So we're going sort of from the hardware to the more software, and then finally we're also going to look at, okay, so why are we not all already doing this? Or maybe some of you are, so I'm going to get back to that after. But we're really going to look at, if the knowledge is there, if the applications are there, what is keeping us from making this step into a more circular way of cooking, of eating, of going about with our waste flows, and what is necessary for us to take that jump. But I'm actually quite curious, because I don't know how far along in your own circularity transition all of you are. And one of the speakers suggested to sort of look at what your guilty pleasures are, to sort of be upfront and be open and transparent on how we are maybe not fully circular in our own behavior. For example, are there people here who feel like in the field of food, the food that they buy or the kind of choices that they make in what they eat, that they are already really contributing to this circular transition? If you raise your hand if you feel like you're already doing that. 1, 2, 3. Nothing much. That's interesting. Okay. And what about in the kind of energy that you use in your home, or how much water you use, or how much electricity you use? Yes, there's one conscious water, electricity. No, a little bit more. And what about really, so also the material you use in your house, and specifically then in your kitchen? So are you really consciously being, really conscious on what kind of material you use in the objects that you buy? If you can raise your hand if you do so. Oh, okay. Oh, cool. Okay. So I think all of us still have a lot to learn and can improve ourselves, if we want to, of course. But let's just dive into what is already happening, and then later on I will get back to you and see how that feels for you, if it clicks with you, or if you feel like, this is all great, but this is really not for me. So I'm every now and then I'm gonna just check in with you and see how all of this reflects on your own life. We're gonna start with the knowledge that comes from TU Delft. So Anne van Stijn and Bas Jansen are going to demonstrate the circular kitchen concept that they've been working on. So give them a warm welcome, please. There you go.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm just going to grab some water first.
Yep, I'll put it here.
I was going to start off.
Yeah, I will kick it off. Well, it's very nice to stand in front of you all tonight. So yeah, I'm Anne, and I will kick it off today. I don't know, wrong way. Oh, ships.
Yeah, I think.
It's a super heavy image. Thank you.
Sorry.
Right. Oh. It's a bit confused. Yeah, right. So I will I'll start off today with introducing you a bit to the challenge. So why did we even got into this kitchen? And then I will give the mic to he already has one, to Bas he will explain a bit more about the circular kitchen itself. Yeah, so I guess most people who are in the room already know a bit about this. But actually what we are talking about today is that we have a linear economy, right? So we take, we make, we use, and we dispose resources. And that leads to resource depletion, but also supply risks. So some suppliers might not be able to get their materials anymore. Pollution and emissions, and of course, waste generation. And actually, when we talk about the built environment, we see that we are major contributors there. So we use about 40% of global resources. We generate about 33% of global emissions, and 40% of waste generation comes from us as well. So we need to do something, right? And actually what we see is that the circular economy provides a more resource-effective way than as an economy model than the linear model. And this is a representation of that model. Have you guys seen this image before? Raise your hand if you've seen it. Okay, so I will spend some time explaining it. So what you see actually here, I can probably point. Yeah, this is what we call the linear supply chain as well. So you see that material suppliers, they extract the material, they make material, then it goes to part suppliers, it goes to a producer, in this case of the kitchen, to a service provider, somebody that installs it. And then actually what we do is that we split resources in two ways in the circular economy. On the one hand, in green, we have what we call the biological loops. So think of, food, think of cotton. Those are the biological materials. And what we do is that we try to, in the end, return them safely into the biosphere. On the other hand, we have what we call the technological side. And those are the materials, think of your mobile phones, your laptops, but most of the building materials as well, they fall into that loop. And what we do is we try to keep those products, parts, materials, as long as high as a value as possible through these different loops. So we maintain them, we reuse them, we refurbish them, we remanufacture them, and in the end we recycle them. And if you look now in the built environment, what we actually do is we focus really a lot on recycling of materials. So we have a house, we demolish it, and we hopefully reuse some of those materials. So that's very much what we're focusing on. And this is actually very important in the end. In the end, we should recycle those materials. But we should first try to prevent waste generation by using those inner loops first. So what we see actually is that if you look at the housing themselves, then for example renovation or maintenance is a very good way of using these inner loops. But at this moment when we maintain or renovate a house, it's pretty much in a linear way. We just put the materials in there, and in the end when we demolish some of these parts we recycle them again. So we actually thought, wait, we can do that better. What if we make a building, well, it consists of components, so we have kitchens, we have facades, roofs, we have bathrooms. What if we would make these components circular so that they can go through all of these different loops, and then we make sort of circular roofs, circular extensions, circular kitchens, and we can make the existing housing, but also new housing if we place them there, more circular over time. And that's actually what we've been doing in the past few years together. We have been trying to make some of these components circular. So we work at what I said, roofs and facades, but that's not what we're going to talk today. Today we're going to talk about the kitchen. And for that I will give the floor to Bas.
Thank you. Yeah, so we're not working on this kitchen alone, not just the two of us working together with a huge team. It consists of the TU Delft, for which we are working, AMS Institute, organizing this evening together with Pakhuis and Zwijger. We have kitchen producer Bribus, ATAX, the appliance manufacturer, a contractor named Zwijger Group, real estate investors, Citrus Achmea, and we have some housing corporations, which is the main target group for the circular kitchen right now. And those are Eigen Haard, Woonbedrijf, Waterweg Wonen, IJmeren. Then we're also working together with an international team. We're working together with Sweden, from Chalmers University Gothenburg, with the kitchen producer Vedum and a housing corporation from there, which is HSB. And together we set about to have a project goal. We wanted to develop a kitchen that has a lower environmental impact, that functions at least as well as the kitchens do right now, and it shouldn't cost much more than kitchens do right now, throughout time. This is an important thing, throughout time. So we try to do so by narrowing, slowing, and closing resource loops. These are strategies within the circular economy. We've seen these loops, and for all these loops you can use less resources, which is narrowing loops, so you use less, so there's less environmental impact. You can slow the resource loops, which means use as long as possible, so that we don't have to make new stuff all of the time. And in the end, if those two are not an option anymore, we can't prolong the use anymore. We can recycle. The way this works for the circular kitchen is that we applied a modular plug-and-play system, in which we use a docking station, which is a wall we place before the wall, into which kitchen modules are placed. These kitchen modules, slow image, yeah, there it is, can then be divided into a constructive frame, which has a long lifespan, an infill, such as drawers, such as a kitchen appliance, that has a medium lifespan, and the exterior finish, the style package is what we call it, and that has a relatively short lifespan. If any of the parts of these kitchen are broken, normally you replace your entire kitchen, it's useless. We try to make it so that any part can be replaced at any time without any hassle, without any use to replace the entire kitchen. As you can imagine, it produces a lot of waste if you take out a kitchen because one door or one shelf is broken. So in order to do that, we couldn't apply any glue anywhere. So the entire kitchen uses zero glue. There's no kit anywhere as well. We use click-on connections that are detachable. And that also ensures that throughout the entire lifespan of the kitchen, you can transport it back into flat packs. So it's not just the first time you get it, you can put it back into a flat pack, you can transport it for refurbishment or whatever. So it uses less space in transport and therefore less emissions. This also ensures, this click-on flexible connections, that you can adapt your kitchen and setup. So if your family situation changes and you get 2 kids all of a sudden, you need a bigger kitchen maybe, then you can easily adapt it. You can add modules, you can take modules away if your family situation changes, or for the housing corporations, if they get another tenant. Some tenants have different preferences. So no use again to take the entire kitchen out and place a new one, but you can just remodel the current one. Then, if the preferences in terms of style, if let's say you have a sort of a style that you really liked for 10 years, but it's kind of outdated now, again, you can just replace the entire style package without having to replace the frame or the infill. And the same goes for the countertop. Then there's also the height problem. You can imagine that Anna and I, we need different types of kitchens. Mine needs to be a bit higher. So if there's a change in tenant for a housing corporation, for a housing association, you can imagine that sometimes they have this problem and they take out an entire kitchen just because someone is 20 centimeters taller than the previous tenant. We also try to accommodate this in this concept by simply being able to put it up a bit higher, just changing the legs on the bottom of the frame and the plinth in front. Then the entire kitchen is made out of a plywood that has a good environmental performance. It makes sure that the interior climate stays healthy. It is kind of affordable. It's more expensive than the current materials, but it's affordable. It has a long lifespan, and it's relatively lightweight. So again, this is the transport thing, less emissions because of lightweight transportation. Because this is not very water resistant at first, we apply a layer of material which is called HPO. I think this table doesn't. Most of the tables people sit on have this specific type of layer on there. And we're looking together with some manufacturers to see if we can apply this layer that is detachable again. So normally it's glued on, but this is a polymer-based substance, and we're gluing it onto wood. You want to take it apart again when you're recycling. So we're looking into using a deactivatable adhesive to do this. So, as said, we're also working together with ATAG, this appliances manufacturer, and we know that the kitchen is not just a piece of furniture, there's also appliances in there. And as you will see tonight, there's way more to it than that. But this is kind of where our project stops. So ATAG is also working together with us to manufacture some more circular appliances. Okay. So this is all the technical part. This is how the kitchen works. But in the circular economy, in order to actually make it work in practice and not just as an idea, you need infrastructure to make sure all these loops actually happen. So for that, we've also made a concept that we're going to test in the next couple of years to see if it works, in which a contractor places the docking station, the kitchen manufacturer supplies the kitchen and places it, and at the point where something's broken, these loops actually happen. So the kitchen producer makes sure that the broken parts go back to their factory, they refurbish it, and so forth. So this is all fine and well. We're not there yet. You also need some incentives to actually do this. So it needs to be interesting. And we need to look at some different models of financing this kind of thing. We can't just sell it and then take our hands off it and never look back. So what we thought of is we have both a business-to-business side and a business-to-consumer side. In this case, the business-to-business side is the housing associations buying a kitchen with a take-back guarantee from the kitchen producer in a basic setup with a service subscription. And then on the business-to-consumer side, there's the tenant that maybe wants the extra module because his family situation is changing or he needs a different style. And for that, we have a financial construction such as lease and buy with take-back. So basically, this is what it looks like if you put all these things together. So we have a docking station, we have kitchen modules that can be plugged in and out. The modules are made out of a frame, a module infill, a style package. And in this way, we hope that the kitchen does not only last a lifetime, but can also be adapted to certain stages and happenings in life. So therefore, we hope it will be a kitchen for life. Thank you.
Right. Yeah. Let's sit down at the kitchen table. That's the basic idea of this evening. Because the kitchen table is always where the best conversations are being held, right? Wait, there's immediately a question. I'm gonna go for it.
Very intimidating.
Mm-hmm.
Are you already testing it in a real situation with the housing corporation?
Do I need a mic?
Yeah, for the
okay.
recording.
For the recording. Okay. So this is on already. Okay, great. The one you see right here is our first prototype. We've built it last Christmas. It was a long Christmas. And right now we're in the process of placing it in the Faculty of Architecture in the TU Delft. The second prototype is going to be placed in actual dwellings. So we're going to place them in a number of dwellings of the housing associations, and we're going to test them there. And we're now in the process of figuring out which type of test do we need to do, which stakeholder thinks which part of the kitchen needs to be tested and what is important. So the short answer to your question is not right now, but we're planning to do so very soon.
Okay. And with the housing
Wait.
recording. Okay. With the housing corporations you mentioned, or are you still looking for new ones?
You want to offer yours?
Actually, yes.
Yeah.
Which one is it?
I think it's best. Okay. But don't go away, okay? I'm in a non-executive board of a housing corporation called Rijswijk Wonen.
All right.
And we are going to do lots of investments also in new buildings.
Mm-hmm.
I might can bring you in contact with the director.
That's very
That's
much
really great.
Yeah, we actually welcome also other housing associations to also think with us. So not just to buy it, but also to come and say, what do you think about it? What do you find important? So I guess we'll have contact and see if you want to join.
Are there any other people with direct connections to housing corporations?
Does anyone else
in
want a
this
kitchen?
room? Yeah. No, but I'm actually quite curious. Like after you seeing this presentation, who would be like, okay, I'm fully in. I would want this kitchen in my house. 1, 2, yeah. Could you tell me like what is it that did it for you?
Well, I like the circular model, of course. And we now have a second-hand kitchen of IKEA, which needs replacement. So this would be an ideal next step, yeah, for sure.
And is there somebody who feels absolutely not convinced of having such a kitchen in his or her home? Anyone with big doubts, or you don't like how it looks, or the entire modulation of it? You wouldn't want this kitchen in your house?
Kitchen for Life, and that's interesting because in the same place we had a couple of weeks ago about fashion, and fashion for life. You not wear your whole life the same fashion, and the Kitchen for Life, it's almost the same. It's a different subject, of course, but it's interesting subject because also in fashion we need more sustainability and also repair instead of building by new, and this is exactly the same idea.
But do you think you would get bored by the kitchen?
Yeah.
Well,
That's
I
interesting.
mean,
I think there will be a new ecosystem about all kind of designs or something, whatever that you can design it, design your own kitchen or whatever that you can replace it or so whatever.
Yeah.
You have to do something, otherwise you get bored.
yeah. So
this is probably something you
We
are
agree.
thinking about as well.
this is a question we get more often because we name it the Kitchen for Life, and the way that's also it's kind of twofold because in general it should last a lifetime, but not all the parts should last a lifetime. So you can imagine that the frame might go on for 80 years. Just not sure how long it will last, but within this system you can change everything according to your preferences. So if you're bored after 10 years, you can switch it up, and actually it's much more easy than to do the same thing with the regular kitchen.
And actually, we made a very conscious decision that some of these parts, they don't just have a shorter lifespan than 80 years, let's say, but we actually made them to have a shorter lifespan than they do now. So on average in a housing association, the kitchen is lasting about 20 years. And with our kitchen, we actually say, no, every 7 years we're going to have a new style package. And when we make environmental calculation, it's going to be even every 3 years, because when you make something more flexible, it's going to be more flexible, so people are going to use it, and maybe then you do something very wrong. So actually we try to test that to this very extreme situation where people almost change their style every now and again.
Yeah.
So actually we make the kitchen even more flexible than it is today.
And I guess that also goes for the developments in sustainable materials that are also being innovated. So being able to stay up to date with that as well.
Very important.
I saw another question.
I was wondering why IKEA is not part of one of the suppliers.
Where is IKEA in all of
Because
this?
IKEA wants to make a lot of profit. Actually, the person that initiated this entire project contacted IKEA at one point, and they were not very interested. I think the reason you're asking this is because a lot of these principles, like flat packing and making it disassemblable, looks a bit like IKEA. But then again, have you ever assembled an IKEA closet a couple of times? They don't go together after a while anymore, and I think that's also part of the market. IKEA has this.
But IKEA, of course, isn't the only company that has that kind of perspective, right? So that's like the bigger challenge in general.
I just want maybe it's an insight for you. 2 weeks ago, I was in Paris at a Sustainable Brands conference, and there IKEA was present a lot. The head of sustainability, and they are launching in 2020 a kitchen as a service model. They're experimenting that in 20 markets. So that's something why they think maybe they can do it better than you and don't want to cooperate.
And what does that mean exactly?
So that you don't buy the kitchen, but you just rent it according to your life principle, and you can enlarge it or similar to your idea.
I think actually it's very we think it's very cool when more and more suppliers are now chipping into this. We don't say this should be the only circular kitchen. We hope that this is a sort of we say springboard, springplank, stepping stone to get more not only the kitchen but also more components to go circular. So that's all. We're very happy with that. What we do think is that what we see, we should be very careful when we hear as a service. Because a lot of components are already offered as a service, so you lease it instead of buying it, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it also becomes more environmentally friendly, because that requires you to change your product. And sometimes a lease construction can already be just financially very interesting without actually having to do something sustainable, but because people associate it with circular, then they think, so service, so it should be sustainable. But those things should be linked.
But you are considering, like, in which options would this kitchen be more sort of like a more attractable to normal individuals as well, right? I mean, I know that you are also thinking about, should we work with sort of lease situations, or maybe you can explain a bit on the kind of ideas that you have on that.
Well, as of now, we are working together with both a business-to-business side and a business-to-consumer side. So in terms of consumer use, I think the major sort of unique selling point, well, the unique leasing point then maybe, is that it's a lot more flexible.
Depends, yeah.
And that I think mainly for tenants in social housing, it's very attractive because they have a lot more options and they have more to say, and they can make it more their own thing that they use in their daily lives instead of just getting a kitchen and having to deal with it. So I think that in this case, it's the major sort of extra for the user.
Yeah, so with the business model, you really have to understand it as it's something that incentivizes that what we thought technically will actually go and come to pass. So we can design something to be very flexible and modular repairable, but if in the business model repair parts are very expensive because actually the producer prefers to sell stuff, then of course it's not going to happen. So you're always turning all of these buttons together to see that it aligns. And in the case, we actually consciously split it into business to business and business to consumer, because the incentives in the supply chain that you would need to make this circular thing happening, so that the producer finds it interesting to make products that last and are repairable, but also for people to bring it back and to take care of it, they are very different if you look at businesses or you look at private individuals. Yeah. So that's why we look at various models and see what catches.
Okay, cool. I think we're going to go to the next step and also look at, okay, so what are we putting inside of these circular kitchens? So I would like Toon Maassen to come. Please sit next to me, Toon. Give him a warm welcome. Let's see.
Hello.
Hi. Kitchen is always the favorite part in the house. I feel very comfortable here. So Toon, you are co-founder of the Keuvel, right?
Yes.
And I think most of the people here will probably know the Keuvel. If you don't, can you raise your hand if you don't know the Keuvel? Okay, a new crowd.
A lot of people know it. Yeah.
Okay, so then please just first introduce the Keuvel to
so I am Toon, and I was co-founder of Café de Keuvel, and which is part of the whole Keuvel. And the Keuvel is a ship wharf in the north of Amsterdam that has been completely transformed into a circular incubator. It was a polluted piece of land, and we've put 15 former houseboats that would have otherwise been thrown away onto the land to make workplaces for creatives and sustainable entrepreneurs, and plants are growing in between that take out the pollution out of the ground, and it's completely using all kinds of technologies that make them almost self-sufficient. And then there's also a restaurant in which we really try to make a platform for the most sustainable solutions for the future. So that in short, and we have a lot of programming also going on.
Yeah, it's a really nice place. Have you ever been or not?
Yeah, I've been there. So it's very nice. For those who don't know it, just go there. It's really nice.
But okay, so the Keuvel really like hands-on experiments with this concept of circularity, right?
Yes, definitely. Yeah.
Have you already sort of tried to really come to a circular kitchen, or is this quite a new kind of approach to you?
Well, so what we've realized, at least if you look at it, in terms of the impact of a kitchen, I think the majority is actually the food that you make, and not the materials that you use or how you build the kitchen itself. So our main focus is really on using the most sustainable ingredients, and really thinking about where it comes from, how it is produced, how like making very innovative meat replacements, for instance, like croquettes that are made from mushrooms that grew on coffee grounds, for instance, or making our own sodas rather than working with Coca-Cola. So these kind of things, and really thinking about what are the best ingredients. That is, I think, the biggest impact that you can make on a kitchen.
And do you really work with measuring the impact, like if you compare it to other bars, for example? Do you?
Yeah,
have
we
some
have
sort of
made some calculations, but I mean, we're mainly just really busy with just trying to get
just
everything,
doing it. Yeah.
running everything, and
Yeah.
it's just already pretty challenging to run a small business and then also doing everything sustainable.
Yeah.
So we have made some calculations, but most of the choices are pretty logical, but it's mainly hard to really make it work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And do you have collaborations with, for example, if you would like to work together with Anne and Bas on getting to this circular kitchen, do you have several collaborations that are similar like that? Or is it really bringing all the knowledge of the communities together to get to the best practices?
Yeah, so we work with first of all a lot with Metabolic, which is a company that was really part of starting the Keuvel, and they are like a consultancy company that works a lot on circularity, and we're very closely working with them. So they know a lot of things, and we can always ask them. We're like, okay, what do you think about this question? What is more sustainable, local, organic, dairy milk, or oat milk, or soy milk that comes from South America? Like these kind of choices, sometimes we discuss with them. And also, for instance, when we were working on more hands-on projects, for instance, while building our own biodigester to make biogas from our own organic waste, we've been working with the Hogeschool van Amsterdam, so the Applied University of Amsterdam. So we have definitely some cooperations.
Yeah. And I don't remember, but did you raise your hand after the question of I would like to have a circular kitchen?
Yes, I did. I did raise my hand.
but so you're because I'm hearing on one hand that you're saying, well, I mean, we're really choosing to focus on food because this is not the biggest impact solution that we can go for. At the same hand, I assume it's all bits help. So.
Yes.
Let's go for it. But what would be your first reflection on what you've just heard? Do you have maybe ideas, suggestions, or things that surprised you? Like how new is it for you to hear?
Well, no, it was really nice to hear. First of all, I think it's really some really nice ideas and a really good thinking in advance of what is circularity, and like thinking about all these different loops and on what to focus, and including also the business side. There's one funny thing that I've discovered while running the Keuvel that I didn't know that had such a big impact, and I think is really nice to also think about. And that is so there's this book written. It's called Draw Down, and this is a group of researchers made a list of all the solutions that we can do to combat climate change, and rank them by how big of an impact they would have.
You know this book?
Yeah, so maybe, and the number one is something that nobody ever talks about, is about refrigerants. So the liquids that are in refrigerators, and apparently
that's the number one.
The number one. So trying to first of all the liquids in our current refrigerators, make sure that they don't go into the air, because one molecule of them has an impact of 1 to 9,000 compared to CO2.
Wow.
So it's really strong. Yeah.
That's crazy.
So if you're thinking about the circular kitchen, it's really important to buy a refrigerator with a natural refrigerant. And also, if you have an old one, to really make sure that you process it well and don't throw it away in the wrong way. Yeah. So that's the thing that nobody talks about, and it's actually one of the biggest things we can do to combat climate change.
Did you know about this? Or
No, I didn't.
but I mean, this is really something that you should take with you in the next
we'll take it to the
talks, right?
team.
Yeah, because I mean, if that has such an enormous impact, then that should be like the direct relation. Like if you want to have a circular kitchen, then this is the required step when looking at fridges, right?
We're always a bit careful when because of course we've heard before, like why are you working on the materials of the kitchen? Like just make the house more energy efficient or the appliances more energy efficient. You're there because that's where most of the impact is. And although that is a very valid point, especially in the Netherlands where our energy mix is disastrous. I mean, that's a very big impact. But when we transition to a bit more cleaner sources, very fast you see that balance also shifting. So then, everything that the energy it takes to produce something, to extract the materials, and to in the end process it again, will suddenly become very important. Because when you see our Swedish partners, their energy mix is a completely different story.
Yeah.
So actually with them, the balance is completely the other way, and nobody's telling them focus on the energy impact of these appliances. No, focus on the material impact of the appliances, because they are huge.
Yeah.
So that's also very interesting to see that can differ from border to border.
Yeah.
And it's also just what you are focusing on, and other people should focus on other things.
Everybody should do a part.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
it makes sense. We should, work on everything, right?
Yeah.
So,
I see some hands.
Who want to join the kitchen conversation?
You need to do both. Also, the metabolic as the material overview of the world is running out. So you have also to do where it's coming from and how it's coming to here. And then you can use the energy question, and then also the raw material question, where it's coming from.
Should come together.
Yeah, come together. That's what the energy and the circular questions are almost the same.
Well, they're very closely related. Yeah, but I think that's also what you were mentioning, right, Toon? Like,
I think we should of course think about everything, but it's also important to, of course, invest most of our resources in the most effective solution.
Yeah. Hey, and the Keuvel is also making really big steps when it comes to waste, right?
Yeah.
And waste flows. Can you explain a bit more on the output of kitchens in that sense,
Yes.
and how you can approach that in a more circular way?
Yeah, so there's several things that we do. First of all, the boats where people are working, they have their own halophite filters. So there's reed filters that filter the grey water, so the water from the sink at the site, so that you don't need sewage. And there's composting toilets. But for the restaurant, we are connected to the sewage, because otherwise it wouldn't be possible. And what we've been really working on a lot is the biogas boat. So to really build a digester where we can put in all the organic waste from the kitchen and turn it into biogas that then is connected to the stove to immediately cook on. So you literally would cook on your yesterday's waste.
Yeah.
So that has been a huge project that we've invested a lot of time and money in, but it was in the end also very frustrating, because once we really built it, we found out it's almost impossible to get a permit for it. So we were never able to use it. Yeah, and now it also sank. So it was so that was a very frustrating project in the end. But I mean, a lot came out of it. So several researchers came out of it, and also. The city is now making a bigger version for a whole neighborhood.
Yeah. Okay. So they're also.
Yeah.
The word is being spread.
Yes.
So
Yes.
yeah. And what is the biggest challenge like at this moment? Like, what is the next big step that you would like to make in the field of circularity that you have?
At the Keuvel, you mean?
Yeah. Well, and after you can
Yeah.
tell me a different one, but for the Keuvel, yeah.
Well, the biggest challenge at the Keuvel for us right now is really trying to see what happens, of course, and that's not necessarily with circularity, but to try to find out what happens, because now we had a lease of 10 years, and the 5 years have passed, so to know what is going to happen in 5 years and try and find a way to get extension or to build something new with the same energy. So that's what we're really focusing on now.
Okay, so but in the field of circulation, you're not really working towards this next really
big project.
innovative.
Currently not. No. Mainly just trying to maintain it.
Maintain it. Yeah. And for you, what is the biggest challenge that you are facing right now with the work that you're doing? Just to get it a bit in the difficult side of it.
We had this question this afternoon. Funnily enough.
We had the same question. Our answer this afternoon was that we're not facing one big challenge, but a lot of small challenges at the same time, and that makes one big challenge.
Yeah. But can you sort of give an insight in what kind of things it is that you're facing?
Well, it's basically everything. If you take it,
Sounds good.
it's some challenges are not that hard to overcome, but there's a lot of stuff that comes up when you start making things circular. You start to judge where everything comes from, and we're running into problems with the part suppliers, for instance, that they're not there yet. So we can put drawers in and make the entire furniture very circular, but the drawer runners are not going to be circular at all. That's one of the things. On the other hand, there's a cost related issue, of course, always, because this is more expensive than a kitchen. But there are also a lot of solutions, and I think
throughout life, right? You said it.
this is maybe you should clarify that a little bit.
This is the one you said. It's very important.
So this will cost a bit more. We don't know how much more yet. We're still developing. So at first, but if you take the cost throughout a lifespan of 60 years, let's say, then you don't have to replace your kitchen 3 times, but you get one kitchen and you replace small parts. So throughout time, it will cost less.
Yeah.
So this is the big difference.
But to make the initial buy is a bigger
probably more
bump.
expensive. Yeah.
And the problem is that that's also why we split into consumers and business to business, because if you are a professional landlord, you have different investment perspectives than you do as a consumer. So as a consumer, we know if the kitchen's going to be 4 times more expensive,
no way. Yeah,
that's going to be difficult. So then you have to look at other business models than you would with professional owners.
Yeah.
So this is very...
They were basically trying to get people to think more in a long-term perspective, and I think that's also one of the challenges in general for the climate
transition
change.
towards a different economy,
Definitely.
right?
So this also doesn't just go for sort of behavioral change, but also for investment strategies, and I think it's one of the main things actually.
And I think actually that's also one of the bigger challenges in the project, is that we don't make this kitchen to put in, let's say, a sort of sustainable Keuvel area, where you would make a few and you would test it out. We're actually making this together with very big parties, which and also housing associations, so it has to really work and be mass producible and well implemented. So all of these small barriers or challenges that we face, they're really important to fix them well, to get things going in a big group, to get it upscaled.
Okay. Are there any more questions or remarks right now at this moment in time? Yeah. Have a very active member in the group.
He said it's expensive. We also need to play around with new things as to move the taxes from labor to raw materials. What kind of impact does it have on the price?
I would make it cheaper.
It will. My honest scientific answer is I have no idea, but I can assume that it will probably be a bit more affordable if this happens. Yeah, and I think also if you shift taxes from labor to emissions or any such thing,
then we're talking.
Yeah, but this also makes this a bit more workable, because then the labor involved can be a bit less expensive. Repairing will probably become a bit more interesting, because there's labor involved, and sometimes for a lot of labor to repair something and a lot less labor to get it from the factory. So I think this will change a lot, but I'm not sure what kind of impact it's really going to have to be.
Then we have to calculate it.
Yeah.
We'll come back to that.
So speak to us in 5 years.
Next time. Yeah. Let me see another one. Hi.
I was wondering, for the Keuvel, the waste you have, what does it consist of, and what do you do to decrease the amount of waste you actually have?
In the kitchen?
Yes.
So our chef is really focusing on every restaurant is just really trying to make sure that you if less of certain dish is bought, that you can still use it for the next day. So you just have a very good stock management. So that is the main thing. So just trying to make sure that that you're managing and making the dishes in such a way that even if they're not sold out in the end of the day, you can still just continue using them. And it's actually quite possible to do it like that. And then sometimes we also, of course, for instance, for the staff, we make something of that was left over, or these kind of things.
For the Keuvel, you mentioned the metabolics, that you go there to ask them questions.
for the local milk as well as the oat milk from far away. Can you like explain a little bit what their answer would be? Because I'm
yes,
in the
definitely,
supermarket a lot of
Yeah, it
times.
was an
Like,
example,
what is what's the right decision to make now?
Okay, yes, that's a very good question. So, in short, the most sustainable is oat milk. That's the short answer. So we currently offer a choice of organic dairy milk from a local care farm even. So that one is really very sustainable, and they are fed also with a waste product. So they make their own feed. So that is very sustainable. Nevertheless, it still remains more sustainable to buy oat milk. And for instance, I think the comparison with soy can sometimes be harder because there's also a lot of deforestation often coming with it, and it's coming from far away. But the most important lesson I've learned from these topics or these talks is that if the product is not fresh or doesn't have to be flown, that it is almost always more important how it is grown and what it is than where it comes from. So often local meat is less sustainable than plant-based products from Australia, for instance, if it's not fresh.
I would like to add to that because I think it's a very cool question that you're asking. Like, you know, I'm in the supermarket and I have to make a choice, like which one is better. Yeah. But I think when you have to do a life cycle analysis in the supermarket to make the choice, it's going to be tough, eh? Gonna be a long trip there.
No, of course. I mean, we have to.
It's pretty complex stuff to make that choice.
You'll be in the supermarket for a long time as well.
No, of course. I mean, we'll need to have government regulations and economic stimuli. But I mean, it's still nice to know for yourself.
No, but a bit later in the evening, we're really going to look at on a really individual scale what kind of dilemmas are there. You know, what kind of choices. So let's keep it in our mind, and then later we will come back to it. I want to do a really brief intermezzo because, as you see, there is actually something on our table here, and I bet that most of you don't know what it is. So, but it's actually really cool. And I received an email from somebody telling me that they have the most circular way of cooking available. So I was like, okay, well, bring it on. So I would actually like to ask Caro if you could please explain a little bit on the eco stove, as it's called, and why it is so circular.
Thank you. I would like to introduce the eco stove. My original background is architect. I studied also in Delft. I've been an architect for many years, but after that I set up a business in stakeholder management for project development. But in my free time, I liked cooking and I liked sewing, and I was very conscious with sustainability. I was very sustainability was a very important issue for me, and I somehow I read about the hay box from the old days. Does anybody know the hay box? Yeah, and I found that that was for me a very inspiring concept, and I wanted to make something like this, but then in a more usable way. I talked to my friend Iris. Iris is originally also from the TU Delft, and she studied in industrial design, but now working in the food, biological food.
So it's full
business.
circle. Yeah.
And we worked further on this concept, and we also developed the eco stove further, and we also wrote a cookbook.
But explain it a bit more on what it actually is, because you explained it to me, but I had no idea before that. And also looking at it, I don't know if many people.
It's very easy. But how it works is you.
Hold it for you.
That's better. You have a pan with food, and it can be anything: rice, beans, meat, but also vegetables. You make sure that it boils, and then you cook it for a few minutes, and then you put the pan with the lid on it in the eco stove, and close it, and then you can just go away and do whatever you like, because the stewing is going further, and when you come back, the food is ready and still hot. Many people don't know this, but you don't need 100 degrees Celsius to actually cook. For instance, meat can be done at a temperature of 62 degrees. So the temperature is going slowly, of course, downwards, but that's okay because you don't need such a high temperature all the time. Iris also developed with our colleague life cycle analysis. Maybe it's nice if you explain.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, I've also been working as an eco designer, doing life cycle assessments in 10 years ago, before I entered the world of organic farming, which I liked more, but still I have the experience. And together with a former colleague, we did a life cycle assessment of this eco stove, because well, at first Caro and I were choosing materials that we thought were environmentally friendly, and but we never analyzed it, and we choose, for instance, linen, which is a very good material. It's even better than organic cotton. And on the inside we had wool, also from organic sheeps, but of course. But we figured out in the life cycle assessment that the wool was not so very environmentally friendly. So we decided to replace it for textile, for recycled textile.
But how do you mean not environmentally friendly?
Yeah, the sheep, they have, they have this uitwerpselen. What is called?
Yeah, well,
yeah, the feces of the sheep is very bad for CO2.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so the sheep itself is okay.
Yeah, it's actually the same as you said from the Keuvel, that a lot of these animal products they produce a lot of methane, and which is considered not so well in a life cycle assessment. It doesn't get a very good score, so that's why we decided also. If you use if you want to make a really circular product, it's better to use also recycled materials. And the recycled textile that we now use has a very much lower impact than the wool, even the organic wool. So that's why we did this whole. You can see it also on the table. We did
so
assessment.
also in your example, it's both like the sort of the hardware and the software. So and the products that you use for the product itself, and the way of using it and using it in to cook. Well, contributes to a more circular way of cooking. Yeah.
Yes. It was not only the energy,
it
but
looks
also
really funny as well, right?
And we, by the way, if I can say one thing more, we also calculated the energy impact that can be saved during the lifetime of the eco stove, and the environmental impact of the production, or actually of the whole life cycle. Mm-hmm. Because what you don't want to have is that the production costs more CO2 than saving it during the lifetime.
Yeah.
So it turned out that I think only 10% or so is of the whole CO2 of the life cycle is part of the production, and the rest is actually saving. So, for instance, if you would say 100 gram CO2 or 100 kilogram of CO2, and the production is 10 kilogram, the netto saving is 90.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's a very, that's why we did the whole calculation, to be sure that we had a good product.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. Give them a warm applause. Okay, we're now going to do something a bit different, because we've been showing you several ways and several interventions that are possible, both in more the building part and the material that is used in the kitchens that all of us use in our homes, And we've been talking about, okay, well, you have the food issue, you have the waste issue, so what kind of choices do you make? But I think it is also good to reflect a bit on how are we actually going to get there, and what kind of conversations, what kind of actions, what kind of steps are necessary if we want to make that transition. And we have a special guest who's going to help us to start that conversation with each other. So we're not going to immediately talk with her at the table, but first she's going to talk to you and give you an assignment. So give a warm applause to Saskia Mulder, please. Okay, Saskia, let me see, where's the second mic? Yes, great. Okay, so
Hi.
just really in short, you call yourself the social reporter.
Yep.
So everybody follow the social reporter. But you are also one of the coaches in the project of klimaatgesprekken, so climate conversations.
Yep.
And you work together with Babette Porcelein, who has written this book called The Hidden Impact, which is a very, very interesting and confrontational book. But the second part that I mentioned, so the klimaatgesprekken, that's actually something that we're going to put into practice
Yes.
a little bit.
We're going to do a very small assignment. And normally we would actually wait until meeting 6 to do this assignment. So we're going to dive right in. But the assignment is actually about talking with your environment, with your friends and family about something abstract and a bit scary like climate change and how hard it actually is. So the assignment is, we're going to dive right in, that you can divide in groups of 3. And one of you is going to be like a very, very fundamentalist, if I can use that word, vegan person, like very vegan, super vegan, hates meat. The other one actually really likes to have like steak every night for every meal. So you're going to have a conversation together.
Role play.
Yeah, sort of like a role play. And then the third person is going to observe the mood in the conversation. So they're going to see like when and where and how in the conversation is there going to be resistance or openness or connection or so. Yeah, that's the assignment. So go ahead.
Yeah,
And we're gonna ask the observers to reflect back for us.
Yeah. So please form groups of 3. I know this is a bit awkward, but it's also funny.
So you can start a conversation, for instance, with, yeah, I'm going to have steak tonight for dinner or something.
Okay, so I'm the steak. It's alright. Ja, volgens mij is dat heel goed.
Ja, ik zie het met deze
So one person is vegan, one person is really likes meat, and the other person is observing the conversation.
Oh, je bent juist andersom altijd. Je kunt zo omdraaien ook. Makkelijk. Ja? Ja, dat vind ik voor mij juist wel onnatuurlijk. Ja, ik vond wel goede oefening. Ja, ik moet zeggen, het is heel goed dat jullie doen. Ja, ze moeten eigenlijk het gesprek omdraaien. Eigenlijk wel. Maar ik kan jullie gewoon wat argumenten voeden hoor. Ja, ik denk dat het vooral heel ongezellig wordt als je het hebt over genocide. Oh ja, of die genocide, ja. En dan vliegt vaak af. Kunnen we een plekje geven? Ja, het is allemaal grote... Het is allemaal misstanden in de dierlijke landbouw. Dus dan moeten we een plekje geven.
Die heb ik er zelf van. Maar volgens mij liet hij een plaatje zien van een varkensstal die heel klein was. Ja, het is een plekje, een heel klein plekje. Maar...
Ja, dat is lekker. Ja, maar wat is dan degene dat jij wat doet met deze?
Ja, ik kan ook gewoon scheiden. Dus ik sta er af en toe een maand Nederlands in. Als ik klopt wordt er. Als het wel leuk is, dan zal de rest wel leuk zijn. Ik ben echt meer een soort... Ja.
Oké, en jij doet het heel erg
Nee. Ik vind wel dat ik doe dat, maar ik hoop dat ik hier moet oppassen en hoe ik het neem. Maar ik denk eigenlijk dat het de makkelijkste keuze moet zijn. De lekkerste keuze, de beste keuze. En dat je dus met elkaar moet zorgen dat het zo is.
Ja, het is natuurlijk van wat ik dan eigenlijk zeg, niet op zoek naar we gaan naar de beste oplossing. De oplossing hoe je het eruit weet en de oplossing ook niet bij de overheid. Het is een combinatie van...
Nee, de oplossing is dus...
Ja, het is dan ook...
Ja, ook zelfs. Ik vind het ook helemaal niet zo... Maar ja, dat is... Zo niet spelen. Helemaal... Heel dag liefst.
Oké, je bent...
Ja, ik zou het zelf ook... We hebben al een paar keer fietsparks gehad, maar dat niet op deze manier. Dus ja, dat zijn de hele... Dat is toch maar... Ik kan dit werk niet dagelijks doen, dus dan ben ik door. Maar het heeft ook voor je ook niet echt een hele goede keuze te zijn. Het maakt zeker met afstand. Het maakt wel afstand tussen mensen waarmee je werkt. Dat is wel, dat merk ik wel. Ja, toch wel een dagje eten. Ja.
Hoe kun jij s'nachts slapen? Weet je dat jij verantwoordelijk voor het leven van 22 uur elk jaar in de hoe kun jij s'nachts slapen? Dat is zo'n lachende baby. Wat zijn? Dat bij eten te straks zijn.
Ik wil bijna zeggen met een buikje vol.
Heel goed. Met een gevulde wijk aan te gaan slapen. Ja, nee, dat is een antwoord.
Nee, maar ja, ik wacht gewoon tot aan ik het weekfeest.
Ja, dat snap ik. Maar het is ja, dan niet. Ja, maar dat ben je. Je probeert het. Maar je probeert het. Want je voelt iets zus. Maar goed, wil je dan eens proberen? Dit is iets. En dan zegt dat sommigen zijn zeggen, dit is het beste, maar bovenaan gekomen.
Nou ja, ik moet zeggen, ik heb wel eens toen ik school werd als gewerkt. En toen had ik zoiets van, nu wil ik wel proberen. Nou, toen moest ik bij een auto halen.
Ah, oké. Nee, dat is grappig. Ja, zo is het beter. Oké, maar dan misschien. Zou je dat
Ja,
gewoon één keer lezen.
Ja, het is een slechts een speciaal.
Nou ja, als ik het vraag Nee, hij hoeft er niet te zitten. Hij kan het uiteindelijk zelfs
mensen in plaats van veel wat van de onderkant hebben, weet je wel.
Okay, you can finish your conversation, finish your last sentence. And now I'd like everyone who was an observer in the conversation to raise their hand. Well, not necessarily, but if you observed something in this conversation that you thought like, wow, the mood changed, either for the better or for the worse. What do you want to share? Does anyone want to share something that they observed?
Yeah,
Yep.
they're in the back. Yeah.
So they're in the back.
We had a pretty reasonable discussion, I think. We had 3 instead of 2, so we had 1 moderate, 1 vegan, and 1 cannibal. But the discussion reached a kind of an impasse when we got to the cost of the vegan products or meat replacement products, and talking about family without the means to purchase those. And then we were talking about, then we moved on to who will be, who is responsible for this cost, and is it, or the responsibility, does it fall on the person in the supermarket or higher up, for example, the economists or the people in charge of the economy, so the government?
So was there any resistance on either part?
They were quite
I saw a
quite
look.
reasonable now, I think, yeah.
And did anyone change their opinion or behavior? Did you feel like, wow, maybe the meat eater is gonna skip a steak tonight, or?
I think there were points where there were facts presented, and then the answer was okay.
Really? Wow, that's only a very small group of people that respond to facts that well. So that's interesting. We've got a unique person here. Anyone else wants to share an observation? Maybe some very heavy resistance that you noticed.
Well, I observed that in this group there was a very strong discussion going on. I don't think so anyone changed their opinion there, or did you?
Well, I think Valerie was kind of a moderate meat eater. Oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah, Valerie was a kind of a moderate meat eater, so she was even asking me questions if she could eat meat once a week. So once a month, okay, yeah. And I sort of agreed to it if she put it in a bigger perspective. But no, I don't think we changed a lot of opinions. Yeah.
Okay, but then you were also a bit more moderate, because I heard you screaming, "Meat is murder! Meat is murder!" But if she can eat it once a month, then a murder month is okay, right?
No, but of course I'm not I'm here to for the whole planet as and not like deciding morally about Valerie's ways, and that's my veganism from, so yeah, so I allow it.
Okay, so systemic veganism, yeah. Okay.
One last person wants to share an observation, either resistance or openness, or.
Thanks. I think the problem is that as a meat eater, your whole life is in a way that you can buy everything in the supermarket, and as a vegan, you really have to take care of all the packaging and not allowing yourself to buy everything. So it's like.
Was that what you noticed in the conversation, or was it?
The vegan person was telling the meat eater what he wasn't allowed to do.
And how did the meat eater respond?
He was playing his heels in the sand. I'm not sure.
Head in the sand, yeah.
I'm not sure how you call it that. Yeah.
Yes. Well, that's what usually happens, right? I don't know how you experience it in your surroundings, but usually when you talk to people about climate change and you try to make it in a sort of like you should change your behavior because, climate change, we're gonna die. Doesn't work that well, right? Well,
yeah.
That's I can switch to here. I
You
think,
can
right?
switch to here. Thank you so much. Thank you all for participating in this. So, Saskia, you can just put it down. That's okay. So, you've been doing more and more of these kind of conversations, right?
Yeah.
Is this sort of an average response, or is this a very extraordinary group, or like how does this?
Well, maybe the person in the back that heard the facts and was like, okay, I'll
Okay.
change. That was extraordinary, but otherwise,
Yeah.
it's quite common.
And what are the biggest observations that you've heard so far when it comes to, because this is really on the question of how do you actually talk with each other about this topic,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Well, the reason behind it is because there's a lot of psychology behind it, and actually our brains are very capable to, if there is any information out there that doesn't match our self-image or that is threatening to us or too abstract, our brains can just sort of put it in a small different room somewhere here in the back so that our self-image stays the way it
intact.
is. Yes. So, well, that makes people be like, yeah, climate change, super scary, super important. Oh, you know what? I booked my holiday to I don't know where,
Japan,
somewhere
yeah.
far, or yeah, you know what? I'm eating vegan, so you know I'm already doing what I can. You know, I have to go to this yoga retreat. Oh, sorry, am I? Am I making fun of vegan people? No.
No.
But
There are people
you
who
know,
go to yoga
it's a
retreats.
very
Yeah.
it's a very logical response that that people can have these simultaneous behaviors, and
Yeah.
and it's just the way your brain is wired. And when you hear something about climate change, it's so big and so like doom scenario coming at you,
Yeah.
and at the same time it's so abstract and so far away
Yeah.
that it's very logical that people are not like, oh, I'm hearing a statistics, let's change
So there's
my
at
behavior.
least one very extraordinary person
Yes.
in this group.
Yes.
No, and when I spoke with you earlier, you also mentioned that there's really also a process of loss.
Yeah.
That you really notice when these kind of conversations are being held. Maybe you can
Yeah.
tell a little bit about that, because I found that interesting.
Yeah. So in climate conversations, it originated in the UK. It's actually called carbon conversations there, but it's in 6 meetings. You go through different themes with the same group. So you go through like your house and the way you eat, transportation, how you consume, stuff like that. And people that participate are always people that are worried about climate change and are searching for, so what can I do in my daily life?
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's a very scary process because it means actually looking at your behavior. So
And really changing your behavior, right?
yes, well, as far as you're willing, because it's never the goal to change people, because that doesn't work.
Yeah.
So the psychology behind it actually shows that when people start changing their behavior and really start looking at, okay, so maybe when I was a participant, for instance, there was this one guy who had this hobby of like super polluting motorcycles. And he was, but at the same time, he had this picture of his kid with him, and he was like, well, you know, for his better future, I want to do something about my behavior, see what, you know, how I can improve. So by the end of all the sessions, he had given up his motorcycle. But for him, it was really like a process of grief and loss, which is actually that there's made space for stuff like that as well. I think we step over that quite easily.
Yeah. Hey, I'm gonna actually go back a little bit to the kind of dilemmas that were already popping up a bit. But before I do, because how was this conversation actually going? Because I don't know in
He
which
was
role
observer.
you were, but I know you have a very particular stance on all of this. So who was who in your
Well,
group of 3?
Well, at first I had the idea to switch up the roles because we've had some conversations before, and I know that Anna does eat meat and kind of likes it, and you,
Kind of, yeah.
I'm not sure. I wasn't sure about you, but I thought it would be nice to switch it up, and we noticed that.
So who were you?
I was observing.
Observer.
I
And
was
then
the
you
vegan.
you were the vegan,
Yeah,
and okay.
yeah,
I was
which
the
just
meat
was
eater.
very
Yeah.
unnatural position because I'm usually in the other position
Yeah.
where all my colleagues tell me like,
Yeah.
why do you eat meat?
But that's quite annoying, right? When they do that.
Yeah, but as I was saying, I find it very admirable. So I don't really see it also as an attack on me. I find it also something which is admirable, and maybe at some point I will get there. But
And I think I kind of noticed that they were both having these conversations with people quite a lot because they were very nice to each other and they were sort of I don't know if the Dutch poldering kind of came to mind.
Maybe also the fact that they are like in a public situation.
like I promise that next week I will try something from the vegetarian butcher.
Yes.
So that was
For the first time.
Yeah.
Yeah, we made some progress.
We made some
Okay, now that's a good start at least. So, but to get back, because we've spoken on like this level of the kitchen itself, which is at this moment at least mostly a question of the hardware, but also of other stakeholders than consumers right now, because it's not in that phase yet. We've been talking on, okay, what kind of choices can you make in food and how you handle your waste. Those are already issues that consumers face every day. So I'm just curious to see like what kind of dilemmas does this audience have. So if you have like a dilemma like, oh my God, every time I'm in the supermarket, am I going for the vegetable that has a lot of plastic wrapping but is biological, or am I going for the vegetable that doesn't have plastic wrapping but is not biological? Like these kind of, so, let us know, because these are the people that hopefully can give you some answers on what is actually a good decision. So to sort of see like what kind of dilemmas do all of us face, and you can be the fact checker of this all, and you can also be the one who maybe has some tips on how to get past that point of resistance from the experience that you've had. But you already whispered into my ear that he made a comment about the milk
you
that was not,
disagreed.
that,
Okay.
so maybe that's the first thing.
curious.
So going back on your dilemma.
Okay, nice.
So
Yeah,
Saskia.
it was about that actually when it was about the question about milk.
Yeah.
So actually when you choose plant-based milk over cow milk, by the way, I love the Keuvel for being the only place that charges less for plant-based milk than cow milk. You have your impact, but then it's almond milk. So almond milk has the most impact of all the plant-based milk. Still has quite a lot of impact, especially because of water use. And then the least is oat milk, and soy milk is a bit more, but they're comparable. So
it's
they're
So it's more nuanced then, because
it's a nuance. It's not. It's
not like you're wrong.
No.
I think I said it, yeah.
Yeah, but they're almost at the same level, oat milk and soy milk.
In terms of CO2, yeah.
But then rice milk, almond milk, all those are like more.
Yeah. Okay. Is there any other dilemma that you guys have, or maybe you have yourselves in your daily life? Anyone? Yeah? Wait, I'm gonna go to the back. I find this really fun. Let's collect some dilemmas in this room. Test our panel. Yes.
So my dilemma is when I in the organic shop and I want to try to choose between like seeds with packaging and seeds without packaging, and like the seeds without packaging come from like India, and the seeds with packaging come from France. Which one is better?
Who votes for France? Let's see. France is better. France. Yeah.
Yes. Correct.
How about the panel? Who of you would raise your hand and think the one from France is a better option?
So closer by, but with packaging, wasn't
yes.
it? Right?
Yeah.
Well, the thing is that you can't really, if you're scientifically going there, you can't really answer that question with this information. So just that it says on the package made in France can also mean it comes from India and is packaged in France. So actually, what you need to do is to mail that company and say, look guys, where do you get your seeds from?
No, but seriously, that's how complex that is.
The seeds comes from France.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I think also depends on how it's transported. So if it came by truck from France, but by a big cargo boat
from India,
India, it can often even be more efficient with a cargo ship. So I would actually choose for the one without packaging.
Yeah. And Bas, what would you say? Because you're a fact checker, Saskia. I will always end with you.
I can only add to the complexity of this question.
Yeah.
I'm not
Real scientist.
Yeah, there's a lot of factors you have to take into account. We've already mentioned transport, but there's also land use change that you have to take into account, water usage. There's a lot of stuff you have to take into account. So basically, the only thing I can say is that I don't have a simple answer to this question. And I
no, but which one would you take? Come on, let's.
If you have to decide right now,
I don't know.
The one which tastes the nicest.
I would run home screaming.
Okay, we stay in the complexity. Saskia.
Yeah. I have to remember the statistics right, but I think like 48% of the impact is in production, then 19 is in processing or something, and then something else is in like transport, and only 6% is in packaging. So in general, if you choose a piece of meat, then only 1% would be in the packaging, and 99% of the impact would be in the meat. If you choose, let's say, a cucumber, 90% would be in the cucumber and 10% in the packaging. Which also means that if the packaging makes sure that the product isn't wasted, it actually has a positive environmental effect. So in that sense, a lot of people are always like, so should I choose the organic cucumber wrapped in plastic or the non-organic not wrapped in plastic? Yeah. Then you better buy the organic one, but throw the plastic, of course, in the right waste. Yeah. Because plastic in nature is a huge problem.
But this assumes that it's both from the same country, right? To level it out. Right. I mean, it has to be two cucumbers from. If one cucumber is from Australia, then I mean the plastic issue is 6%. You said, right? So.
But since a big part is in transportation, then that gives you the idea, like, should I choose transportation over wrapping? Yeah. And I have the choice.
Oh yeah. If you Maud, if you could make the slide, yeah.
Yeah. So this is basically because I'm a trainer also for the Hidden Impact, which I think is the most important book of this time, because it tells you exactly what you need to do in daily life, how you can become more sustainable. Mm-hmm. And it's all based on life cycle analysis. And basically this is like to help you make your decisions in which order you make the most sustainable impact when you have to choose something in the supermarket. So first, if you choose plant-based over meat, you make the biggest difference. No. Then if you prevent food waste, then if you buy local and in season, and then organic, and then the wrapping. So, just...
So do you want to have this discussion with the vegans and the cannibals again right now with this statistic? See if some opinions change?
No, but I think that's a different thing, because you can give people the information, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they will act on it, because that's a whole different thing, I think.
Do you have a dilemma or a question or a frustration?
Yes, I was here in the discussion. I said immediately I'm a Burgundian, Burgundier, and I was in a couple of weeks in the HEMA. There's also a restaurant, and there was a full desk of all kind of lovely pancakes and muffins and everything. Everything it was around 7 o'clock, and I said okay. I walked it, and I turned and I saw the girl all the things throwing in the bin. I said, what are you doing? What is it? What is this stupid? You should give it to me for free, whatever, the half the price, whatever. No, it's just regulations. I have to throw it away, and no a discount, and they throw it away. And I was in the Macro, the big shopping, and they did Laplace exactly the same.
Yeah.
and they throw all the fresh smoothie so into the bin. I said, my God, it was frustration for me. It was bin one, and I said, you need to the book of the hidden impact. It's completely crazy what's happening here. I didn't see it, and it's also happening in the supermarkets. And I also said that in the frustration that if it's allowed to if I'm eating meat sometimes, okay, not every day, right? But the big stickers from the 35% discount, otherwise they throw it away. So I always they check the whole thing that okay, if there's the sticker. Yeah, so this is a little bit frustration from my side.
Yeah. Okay, so there was definitely some resistance in this conversation. I mean, that's
about
for sure.
35% of all food that is produced worldwide is wasted.
Yeah.
Which is ridiculous. Yeah.
Ridiculous. So we have to pitch the whole the thing to the board members of the HEMA and von Waco tomorrow.
Yeah.
Tomorrow. Yeah.
Yeah, so
Are
it's
there,
also
are there
because-
any other? Sorry, you wanted to add?
It's always the problem with buffets. So people just expect that when it's open, everything is there that you want to choose. And with a buffet, then then you always have this problem.
Yeah. Okay, so boycott buffets.
Yeah.
Are there any other dilemmas, issues that you really feel? I mean, I'm just doing my groceries, or I'm in the store, and I really don't know what to do with that. Very smart crowd. Look.
Well, I'm more thinking like, because I still eat meat, not every day, but I try to buy local products because I don't live in the city, so it's easier for me. But also, I would like to think about choosing your butcher, for instance, more in a way of maybe trying to be part of more of a transition, because if I buy a product at a butcher who only uses local farmers with for their products, and all the animals walk outside so they have a better life, then I personally believe that it's maybe better to do that, because not all people are willing to live without meat, and maybe like that I can contribute differently. So the people who are actually doing something in their way to contribute to better life for the animals. So that's my kind of mine.
So then maybe the question would be like, do you have any insight on what kind of impact that makes? How positive that is, your contribution in that sense? Yeah, do you have any ideas, or is this?
I think we just spoke about an example about the biological dairy milk, right?
Yeah.
So maybe this is some similar case where you can compare it to a plant-based alternative.
So it also matters, of course, what you care about. So maybe you find it very important that you know the place and you want to be sure that the animals are treated well and you can trust it. So then, of course, local makes a lot of sense, because you can actually go there and see it, or maybe you know the farmer. And if you care about animal welfare, that makes a lot of sense. But if it's really about environmental impact, then it's much better to choose for non-meat, even if it's not local.
Yeah, and in some ways, it actually has. Well, it's a gray area, because some of the way of raising cows that are less nice for the cow actually are more efficient. So in that sense, they have less impact actually on the environment. But it's like
That's
what
so
you
sad.
said, like what is important to you. And there are actually also some parts in the world that you cannot grow anything else on than grass, basically. So in that places, it would make sense to at least use those lands for like food. And I think Zwijger University calculated that if it would be in a sustainable way, which is in no way comparable to the way we're doing it now, then it would be possible to do it in a way where we could eat meat once a week.
Okay.
But, yep.
Okay. Yeah, I know the research you're talking about. I'm also working with organic farmers, and it's true that if you have extensive farming which means 1.2 hectare per cow, then it is CO2 neutral because the cows eat grass and the grass grows back and holds more CO2 because it's difficult to explain, but if the cow cuts the grass doesn't grow back like one grass, but actually 2 or 3. And it grows sideways, and by that it holds more CO2 than the methane the cow gives. So that's CO2 neutral. So in the case you said where you cannot grow any vegetables, but you can only grow grass, like in Holland in the veenweidegebieden, you can only have grass, then it makes sense to have this extensive cows. And it's CO2 neutral. So and in that case you can have once per week meat.
Okay, but then depending on how many people live in the country and how much of that land is available, of course. Yeah.
And I actually heard that they're also experimenting with feeding cows seaweed, and that they burp and fart less actually, which causes less methane emissions.
That's
so
true. I do wonder whether that's really. I mean, because methane is a much stronger greenhouse gas than CO2. So. It's calculated. Okay. 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 Okay.
Okay, cool.
But then they should not be fat at all. So they only eat the grass, right?
They only eat grass and
no soy, no power
So
foods.
that's why I said that, and that is mostly the case with organic farming.
Yeah. Okay, we're gonna round up. I'm just gonna check and see if you have last recommendations, tips, insights that you would like to share. If that this audience can go home and think like, okay, well, if I'll do this, I've made a difference, small or big, when it comes to working towards that more circular way of living, and then specifically in the kitchen, because we're in the kitchen topic today. Bas.
Do not despair. No, no, I would just like to tell everyone to just not worry too much about your own behavior. I mean, you're trying to make a difference probably because otherwise you wouldn't be here. Don't feel too bad about yourself that you're not doing everything, because if you're making a difference, it's already a difference. And I think it's not just up to you. There are other people and there's other institutions that are also trying to do something.
Yeah.
So that's what I would like to tell everyone.
Okay.
Yeah, well, I have another addition to this discussion, because I
thought
think,
so.
this discussion is going very much about, what can I do? And you already says that, there are also other people working. And I think that's at least even maybe more so important, because here maybe we already get the front runners in circular thinking at the table. Yeah. But there's also a lot of people that, they're just normal people and they might think it's important, but maybe they don't want to put effort in it. We have to try to find what are their, what do they really want, and can we join these tasks together, so to get, we call that a merger of interest, so to get this transition going. So I think it's actually equally important to, not only do it yourself and make the right choice in the supermarket, but, ask the supermarket, I want this, or ask your housing association, look, guys, I want a circular kitchen, or I find this important, so that we get this question also to the companies, the institutions, because I think they can also make a very big difference in making this the best choices easier for us.
Great.
Good point. Well said. I just wanted to repeat my point about the refrigerators. So
okay, but be more specific. Yeah. What do we need to do?
Okay, so what you need to do is when you want to get rid of your refrigerator, you really bring it to the place where they really process the refrigerator in the right way, so to the afvalpunt where they do that well. Mm-hmm. And if you buy a new one, you must buy one with a natural refrigerant. So I think, well, I'd have to look it up again. But if you look up natural refrigerant, so natuurlijke koelvloeistof, then there are 3 types. So it's either CO2 or ammonium or propane. Then I mean you should buy that one. Yeah.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
the number one impact factor, right?
Well, the number one solution. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Matt, if you come here. Wait.
So when you live in Amsterdam, you don't put your refrigerator on the street where
No.
they pick up the trash?
No,
Really have to
exactly.
bring it? Okay.
Oops. Meat is murder, don't forget.
They might. I'm not sure. They might. I mean, they might still process it well. I don't know, but I think
Maybe-
to be
may-
sure, because it's really a big impact.
I would say maybe do put it there if it's still working, and put a sign on it that it actually works, because a lot of furniture and stuff gets picked up by people that reuse it. You see trucks in Amsterdam driving around with people just picking up your old appliances.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of them, if they still work, are actually reused. So I wouldn't say don't put it there.
But and is it possible to just replace the liquid that is in your fridge with the sustainable one?
Yeah, yeah. It's
or do you need to change your entire fridge?
Yeah, you can also. I think I'm not sure if it's also with consumer, but for the
I
professional.
wouldn't do it yourself.
I wouldn't do
These appliances aren't made to do that kind of.
No.
But yeah, it's
Okay.
possible to just replace the fluid. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
but then maybe with professional help and not like a
definitely.
YouTube video.
No.
or something. Okay.
No.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, then it's up to you. You have
Yeah.
the most
Final
the most
There's
tips, I
so
think.
much going through my head right now. I don't think it even fits all out of my mouth. No, but I totally agree with you in the sense that you should definitely focus on like what you're already doing. And as you know, I am firm believer of like handelingsperspectief, like action perspective, I guess you would call it in English. So I would actually like to say something about what you can do when you go back home, because by yourself, indeed, you don't make a lot of difference, but we're in a room here with, I don't know, 50 people. So together we actually do make a lot of difference. And I think the biggest impact you have in your kitchen is, like you said, in your food. Well, I think we gave quite some ideas on how you can lower your impact, but don't focus too much on lowering and less, but focus on what nice stuff you can do instead and keep it positive. And I think focus also on not only your own impact, but also the positive impact that you can have in your influence sphere, circle, in your circle of influence. Yes, thank you. Because when you are enthusiastic about your own process, and when you share your story about how maybe there was a tipping point for you when you started to wanting to become more sustainable, and when you let people know that you think it's very important, like you said, companies, politics, everyone, then I think together with everyone we
So
can
have
actually
have those conversations.
Yes.
Okay.
But when you have those conversations, don't try to convince the other people, but listen, because there is really only like 13% that will move on information and facts, and about 61% they want to, but they either want their friends to do it as well, want it to be the next normal, want to know what's in it for them, want authority figures to. So there are like a lot of different target groups that all need a made-to-measure message.
So go talk with their friends.
Yes.
Go talk with the celebrities in your circle. Try to make it the new normal. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you all so much. Thank you, all of you so much. I really enjoyed seeing all of you interact and participate that passionately. This is it. We're gonna stop now. We can continue talking downstairs at the bar. I hope you all had a great evening, and we have some other events. If you look at the agenda of Pakhuis that are coming up, you're always welcome to come back. Thank you so much, and have a good night. All right. Dank voor dit